if you want to achieve in this life, you need to set your goals higher.
I'm already pretty high.
When they introduced crunk dancing, it was a beautiful thing because there was no rules now. You just put on the music, however you resonate with the music, you just did the damn thing. Alright? So in the movie Ride, I said to myself, Ride, why would they call it Ride? And I'm watching the movie and I said, oh, that's the Kundalini energy. Rising up the base of the spine to activate the pineal gland. It's the ka. Alright? It's the ka. You see the symbol here? Of the ka being raised up, the energy rising up the base of the spine. It's the ka. So it brings me back to when I watched Rise, it says the revealing documentary of South Central Los Angeles community, which captures a potent combination of artistic expression through the exhilarating music and street dance. So as I was watching, I said to myself, oh, I got it. I said, that is our cosmic connection to one another. Are you following me? So I started telling everybody, you got the genetic cosmic permission slip to just be your damn self. Are you following me? How many people here? When's the last time we danced? When's the last time you danced, bro?
Hello and welcome to Voluntary Hippie Radio, where we explore the philosophies of non-aggression and self-ownership from a counterculture perspective. That clip you just heard was actually recorded this past weekend at the lecture presented by Professor Griff. It was actually him and someone named Black Dot that they're doing this tour called The Death of the Hip Hop Illuminati, and they actually made their way to Baltimore, and I had the pleasure to get out there, and it was really awesome. I managed to record a couple clips, which I'm going to play at the beginning of the show today, and then I'm going to get into a deep philosophical conversation that I had this Sunday morning with Kurt Williams of Room 101 Radio. So we do sound a little bit groggy, but it was 9 a.m. on Sunday morning, so I'm sure you guys could give us a break on that. But the clip that we just heard was really awesome, and I only managed to record the MP3 at the tail end of that, because the recorder that I have is really shady and the battery power doesn't last too long, so I had to kind of clip it in there in the middle of his talking about breakdancing and crumping, which was a form of dance that was depicted in the movie Rise, which is based on traditional African dance. And he was talking about how when you observe the patterns in these dance moves, many of which are not choreographed, I guess you could say, or pre-planned or anything like that. They're just completely from the heart, and they are in sacred geometric patterns, which is something that was totally new to me, completely blew me away, and I'm going to be looking a lot more into that. He was talking about dancing activating the Kundalini energy, which I've heard about that before, but I have not heard about this sacred geometrical dance patterns, which he says was specifically with breakdancing and crumping, which was what he looked into. And I'm sure that the more natural forms of dance that you look into, you'll be able to find this same kind of phenomena, which I think is pretty awesome and mind-blowing. So the other clip I'm actually going to play in a few minutes is the guy that opened up for him, I guess you could say, and he was an incredible lecturer too, and he's actually also a hip-hop artist. He goes by the name of Black Dot, and in the clip that I have from him, he talks about something called the victim consciousness, and how that relates to the tales of the Illuminati and all the classic stories that we know about Adam Weishaupt and all these, meetings that apparently set the course of direction that changed the world into them ruling us even more. Not that they didn't rule us before, but at least we had places to run away to, and they didn't control every economy in the world and things like that. So I definitely agree that there is a ruling class, that they do keep secret, and they do all of these things behind the scenes, and I agree with most of the history, the history that would be put forward in the alternative media, and the history that I covered in my book, Alchemy of the Modern Renaissance. But I think he brings up a really good point here about how some of the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-pervasiveness of the New World Order is really thrown in our faces a lot, and I really think it paralyzes us with fear in a lot of ways, and it brings us into a victim mentality. While we are victims, and we do need to overcome that, but at the same time, we don't want to give our oppressors too much credit and take their word for everything. Even when they talk about the nasty things that they've done, it very well could be intended to intimidate us. So again, I completely agree with most of the history that is put forward in the alternative media, but it's still important for us to think critically about these things, consider all possible sides, and I think that Black Dot does a really good job of doing just that in this clip right here, so check it out.
It's because your attention on these things is what gives these things life. They cannot exist without our attention. All right, so we're in the matrix, whether we know that this is being sponsored by the Illuminati, if you want to say, all of these people who are vying for your attention to keep you focused on things you shouldn't. Okay? So I want you to keep this in mind as we go through these slides. All right? Because they have the attention of the youth. This is why what me and Griff are doing is so critical, because they're not worried about you, they're worried about the youth. You control the youth, you can control the future. This is not rocket science. All right? If they get the mind of the youth and get them focused on things they should not be focused on, the train will run itself. All right? So this is why, they got the Jay-Z's and all of these artists doing things out here to keep the youth focused on that. I'm 44 years old. There's no eldership in hip-hop. That's the problem. The children are running amok because there's no eldership. And they do not want elders in hip-hop. This is why you don't hear them talk about the elders in hip-hop, because they can control the age. All right? Older men for war, older men for counsel, younger men for war. These young do not understand the spiritual essence of their words, their energy, colors, vibrations, everything that they do. And the elders are not allowed in unless I'm 44 and my pants is dragging on my ass. And I call myself Little Doc. Young Doc. If I do that, I might get in. But I'm a grown-ass man, though. Alright? And I have to speak to you as a grown man. But I do recognize the language of the youth. I can't criticize them as much as I would like to, because they don't know no better. Right? We got to show better for them to know better. But if they don't allow the upper echelon of hip-hop, the public enemies and KRS-Ones, who are still relevant today, if they don't allow them to connect with the youth don't see a way out. When I was 18, I wrote some raunchy lyrics. When I was 15 and 16, real raunchy lyrics, I didn't know no better. I was 15, I thought, hey, this sounds cool. I cringe now when I hear it. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm older and I know better. All right? All right. All right. Before we get into the depth of the Illuminati, we need to know who is the Illuminati. Now, I threw Adam Weishaupt up there. This man may not have even existed. Okay? But when you understand, or we read all them books in the 80s about how the Illuminati came about, this is the main character they speak about. From Bavarian, Germany, 1776, he was running through the jungle or something, and he dropped some papers. He was running through the wilderness and he dropped the secret documents, and somebody else picked up the documents and understand that there was a big plot from the Illuminati to come and control your life. I'm going to go back to the energy. We suffer from victim consciousness as a people because we continue to blame everybody else for the condition we in. And when we have a target to do so, when we say, man, my life is only screwed up because of the Illuminati, man, it's nonsense. We got to begin to look in the mirror and work on self first. Does not mean there aren't external forces. Let's be real. But we have a tendency not to try anymore. We give up on life because we figure we've already been defeated. Tonight, I'm going to tell you who the real Illuminati is. And they're sitting right here. You are the illuminated ones. You just have forgot who you are as a collective. We have forgot who we are as a collective. So Adam Weishaupt, 1776, and it's funny because that's supposed to be the birth of this particular country, but it's funny how you see how things go in duels. So while you celebrate one thing, they be celebrating something else. Now, I say that to say, this is how this works. They can tell you something that happened a long time ago, give you some dates, place themselves into history, and it can affect your life today.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that and could hear that all right. If you want to help out with the audio quality or help us get some more video stuff, you can donate over at aotmr.com and help us expand our operation. If you're just a broke-ass hippie like me, though, you could just go ahead and enjoy the free media and just chill. If you have the means, though, and you want to see improved quality, then just think about donating if you like the show. So anyway, what I think Black Dot was trying to get at here is that the real solutions to the problems that we are facing today is within ourselves. Yeah, sure, there are external forces, but we don't have any power over these external forces. All this Illuminati and New World Order, we do not have any power over that necessarily. Not through the mechanisms which most people would think, like politics or violence or whatever. The only way that we could change all that nonsense that's going on the outside is to change the paradigm that humanity is living under. And the only way that we could change the paradigm that humanity is living under is to each of us as individuals find it within ourselves to change our vibration to a love vibration. I know that sounds extremely lame and cliche, but that's really what is going to change the world for the better, and that's really how it's going to happen. And before everybody out there says that I'm some kind of shill, of course I'm not saying that these forces that want to control our lives don't exist, because they do. And they're definitely a problem, and they're definitely something that we need to be concerned about and focused on, for sure. But we can't be focused on that stuff so much that we allow this personal growth that needs to happen to take a back seat, because our personal growth towards a state of peace and love is what is going to undermine this system and replace it with something that is voluntary and peaceful and happy and totally not like what we see today, and which is what we all want to achieve. So that is where we should really prioritize our energy. That should be our top priority, is not only for ourselves, but to encourage other people to do the same. The only reason why all of these dark occultists and the ruling class and all these total maniacs, the only reason why they have any control is because people are in a mental paradigm where they go along with it and they support it and they approve of it. And the only reason why these forces exist that seem all powerful is because people's heads, people's ideas, people's worldview allows it to go on. So therefore, if we change the worldview, if we change the paradigm, then they will not support this insanity. And that's really the only way to do this, because it's not like we can come at them with violence. They are very, very good at using violence. They're the best in the world at using violence. That is what they do. That is their whole deal. So that is not a battleground that we should fight them on, as I say many, many times. This needs to be a intellectual and spiritual evolution, not a violent revolution. So these are all important things that we need to think about, because there's just way too many people out there that feel powerless, and there's a lot of people that are even rejecting information that we bring to them that they would usually accept and they rationally know in their heads is true, but they reject the information because they think that these problems are so hard to deal with and so removed from their personal lives that there is no point in even focusing on them or even admitting that they exist, because, hey, there's nothing you can do about it anyway, so why do anything? Why even worry about it? Why even care? Why not just live in blissful ignorance? That is everyone's attitude, because they think that there's no solution. In reality, there's a million solutions, and they all lie in our heads. So that is a message that really needs to get out to everybody, because everybody is just too set in this, physical 5 sense mind state where they're totally overlooking the power that they have within themselves to transform society. So I thought that it was really ironic that that was such an overlying topic at this event, because just hours before I had this conversation that I'm about to play with Kurt Williams, where we were talking about just that, about using philosophy to develop a personal understanding of reality and to improve yourself and how you interact in that reality and inspire others to do the same. And that is how paradigm shifts happen. So we got into some really good stuff in this interview. I hope you enjoy it. If you missed any of this and you want to check the archives, go to aotmr.com/podcast, and you could download all the back episodes as well. And if you want to join us in the chat, you could go to ucy.tv/jgvibes or aotmr.com/radio. Both places will direct you to the same chat room, and you could talk live during the show. I also just released 2 new books completely for free. One of them actually has an audio book out already. The second one has an audio book coming that I'm still working on. The titles are Finding Freedom in an Age of Confusion, which is kind of like, I guess, a weird activist kind of self-help book, I guess you could say. It's kind of a more positive look on a lot of the issues that we face, a little bit more optimistic. And then the other one is Creating Peace and Abundance Through Stateless Economics. And in there I talk a lot about how trade is possible without the coercive nature of government, and how we don't need government for private property or safety or any of that kind of stuff. We could have private property on our own as individuals, and in reality, when there is a government, there is no private property. That's kind of how things have worked, or at least there's a far lesser degree of private property protection. So there is a whole lot of good stuff in there. I hope you'll check out the PDF for now of the economics book, and you can check out the PDF and the audio book of the Finding Freedom in an Age of Confusion. And for those of you who didn't know, my main project is Alchemy of the Modern Renaissance, and that is an 87-chapter counterculture textbook which goes into all of the important issues that our generation faces, with tons of sourcing and documentation so you could choose your own path of research after you finish reading. As always, if you have any questions, disagreements, or issues with the show, feel free to send me an email at jgvibes@aotmr.com. And before I cut into the interview with Kurt, I also wanted to give a shout out to the Intel Hub crew, www.theintelhub.com. I am now a staff writer for them, so you'll see me with a current news article out every day coming out through the Intel Hub. I will still continue to write for Activist Post and Strike the Root, but I will be doing exclusive news stories for the Intel Hub also, so that's very exciting. So here we are. From now until the end of the show, you will get to hear me and Kurt Williams talk philosophy and psychology. Peace and respect to everyone.
All right, it is 9 a.m. here on the East Coast. It's the 23rd of September. You're in room 101 here at the Oracle Broadcasting Network, oraclebroadcasting.com, room101radio.net is the site for the show. You can email me at Kurt, C-U-R-T, at room101radio.net. Got a great show. Been chomping at the bits all week for this show. Got a good friend, great guest, author, activist, JG Vibes, AOTMR is his .com, right, JG?
Yeah, that's correct.
AOTMR.com is his site. We got a lot to talk about, and usually, I'll sit and jibber jabber because this is the first short segment here, just getting you ready for the day's broadcast. But I do have JG with me. We're going to be talking just as I mentioned right before we went on. It's not going to be really a political show, if you will. It's going to be a lot more philosophical. I want to talk about issues that affect each and every one of us, and if we can really come to terms with a lot of these, and a lot of them are personal issues, but if we can come to terms with a lot of these problems that stare at us right in the face, and I'm not talking about New World Order, I'm not talking about even the economic collapse. But in turn, if anything positive can be taken out of this next 2 hours, you will indeed be able to, I think, better yourself and your chances of getting through an economic collapse will be, I think, a lot greater. Now, the reason I say that is because, well, we're going to be talking about, things like, how are we? You hear a lot of people talk, we got to get together with community and this and that. But yet, JG, there seems to be such a deep-rooted, I don't even know the word to put on it, just this deep-rooted division within society, within just, individuals. And it is, I think that one of the things that is really keeping us on this path to where we're not going to be able to, it may be too late for us to take and lock arms, because we're going to be scrambling just trying to get, through the day. Another thing I want to speak about before the show's end is I seen a guy he put together, and he was also a sufferer of bipolar, and he mentioned he brought about a very interesting theory, which we were discussing moments before the broadcast this morning, and that's that bipolar is not necessarily a mental illness to be drugged and hospitalized over and stigmatized over. It's actually a spiritual awakening, and that traumatic experiences, usually occurring in childhood, but often a lot of times into adulthood, are suppressed and are kept down a lot of times by the very medications that are put into place to alleviate. We got so much to talk about. Stay tuned. Here in Room 101 this Sunday morning, 23rd of September. Got my good friend JG Vibes on with me. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're in Room 101. I'm your host, Kurt Williams. Here every Sunday, 9 a.m. And again, if you caught the intro to the show, got a really good one lined up. I'm going to shut up and pass the mic over to my guest, good friend, JG Vibes, author, activist. And JG, your site, AOTMR.com, for those not familiar with that site. Those who have listened to Room 101 before know that you are revisiting Room 101. So tell us a little bit about what is AOTMR? What does that stand for? You have some audio books over there, plus your own book. So please plug away. Tell us a little bit about who JG Vibes is.
All right. Well, my website, AOTMR.com, that's the acronym for my book, Alchemy of the Modern Renaissance, and that is an 87-chapter, I call it a counterculture textbook, because it's really about a whole bunch of different things relating to the counterculture, and it's set up in like a textbook where there's a whole bunch of sources and documentation, and everything's kind of separated by subject.
Yeah, there's not too many subjects that are left out. The economy, education, I mean, you name it, it's in there.
Yeah, I tried to be as complete as possible, and it took over 4 years to finish. And just recently, this past week, I put out 2 free ebooks and audiobooks. I only have one of the audiobooks finished so far. The other one will be coming soon. So I have all that, and then I also have a show of my own called Voluntary Hippie Radio that I have archives for on the site and everything.
I love the name, Voluntary Hippie Radio. Great.
Yeah, I tried to do something unique and a little bit true to the name, because as many people who listened before, I also spent a lot of time hosting raves and events like that, and running a label of sorts. So that is kind of what got me, at least not started in activism, but started in putting my message out there, because it was the first time I really ever had a platform, and I didn't really ever think about putting the message out there until I had that platform. So,
well, glad you're doing it, man. I mean, you got a lot of good stuff to say, a lot of really good insight, which is why I invited you back to talk about, as I mentioned, some philosophy, and basically we're just talking about, asking deep questions and doing some real hardcore thinking, about life, because there is different areas, of philosophy, philosophy of economics, philosophy of life, in general. And this seems to be a topic that you enjoy and look more into than so much the politics. What, if any, JG, role does philosophy play in some, extremely turmoil times that we're facing? QE3 and all of these just, brick walls coming at us at 90 miles an hour. What, if any, role does philosophy play?
Well, it's really all of that 5 cent stuff that you just mentioned, that political stuff that brought me to philosophy, because
same here.
I was trying to have an understanding of why these things were happening, and QE3 isn't just happening because we're out of money. It's happening because all these things have been set into motion essentially because people are whacked out and they have all these crazy ideas in their head. And philosophy is something that I see as it's a way of defining and understanding our reality and how we interact with each other and what's going on in people's heads and how that all affects the greater community, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because there's so much more to philosophy than just asking the questions like, why am I here, or who am I? These are very big, important questions that have, well, drove some philosophers, quite crazy, and they've ended up in insane asylums. And but there's more to, or asking, you know, is there a God? There's more to it. Wouldn't you agree? And I think that you just kind of hit on it to where, you know, you can use this to benefit and strengthen the community.
Yeah, I think all those really big questions, I mean, they're important, but they're a little bit of a red herring in the sense that, like, they should be in the back of everybody's mind, kind of, but it really does not need to be the focal point of someone's research, because you're going to end up running around in circles, and it's not concrete enough and close enough for reality to actually have any kind of effect on anything.
Yeah, and it can, and it has drove, as I mentioned, a lot of philosophers. Nietzsche, I believe, spent his last years suffering from dementia in a mental institution. Now, I'm not saying that solely his belief, his philosophy put him there, but I think that it for one played a big part. Because you get so involved and you run in circles that it can be quite maddening.
Yeah, it definitely can. I mean, I've even had that experience with certain things in the past. But one of the major things that I think is important is the cultural aspect of philosophy and the kind of looking into why people do the things they do and why situations in society are the way they are. And I think that is definitely like a philosophical endeavor there. I mean, yeah, you could find out what happened by looking into history and researching that, and you could find out what events took place. But when you start to try to find out what made people actually carry out those actions, like what inside their head made them carry out those actions, that's when you start to get into philosophy, in my opinion. And I think that that's really what we need to start looking into now, because that's really the only way that we're going to reverse this process is to find out the causal factors and to see what we can do about changing them causal factors so they don't create what we're creating right now.
Absolutely. And, you know, I firmly believe that the first person you need to start with is yourself in doing this and understanding what's going on inside your own head. And we all play such an integral part. We have to understand, you know, what part we do play. We got to take a quick break. JG, man, we got so much. I can just see this next hour and 45 minutes just getting into really good conversation. I want to thank everyone for joining me this morning over in the chat room, 101radio.net. You can chat with us over there, oraclebroadcasting.com. We'll be back, Fred. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kurt Williams, your host here in room 101. Broadcasting live from the Oracle Broadcasting Network, oraclebroadcasting.com, room101radio.net. My guest today, good friend JG Vibes. We're talking about life, the role, if any, which I think so far we just started getting into that right before the break. And as you mentioned, there does seem, in both of our minds at least, that there is a important, if not significant, role that philosophy in the aspect of culture and community can be useful. Excuse me. You made a really good point, and we were talking about this during the break, and that's you were mentioning, looking and thinking about why, not just the acts that people commit, but why do people do the things that they do? What is propelling them to do, well, and as I made the example, when I was younger, I was almost to an obsession point. I was extremely interested in serial killers, not because I put what they did up on a pedestal and thought that it was just kick ass, that these people were running around taking lives. No, it wasn't that. It went deeper. And I'm talking like 14, 15 years old. That, I'm going to the library, I'm getting books out on different serial killers. Another one, which I don't classify him as a serial killer, but I know some people would, Dr. Kevorkian, otherwise known as Dr. Death, assisted suicides. Why are these people doing these things? And as I got older, I still kept this thinking, and it was until, later that it started to go from looking at serial killers and why they did the heinous actions and things that they did to, well, why is this friend or this girlfriend, feel this way about themselves? What is causing this person to do some of the dumbest things I've ever seen people do? Why are people acting this way? And you had mentioned as well that, that was something that you kind of really gave a lot of thought to in your teenage years. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, that was something that I was very interested as well. And I didn't really understand why I was interested in that.
Yeah, same here. My friends thought I was crazy. I think my mom first started thinking, oh boy, what's wrong with my son? Why is he so obsessed with serial killers?
Yeah, I had the same reaction from everybody I knew too. I mean, because it is strange. I mean, you wanting to know about this crazy stuff, but I think it's hard not to have a curiosity, at least if you're a decent person, about why people do these things. And I think that the answer is generally with these serial killers. Most of them had extremely screwed up childhoods, and they're kind of like, when you're a kid, the world is like a lot different. It's like a lot smaller. It's just confined to your personal space. And if your personal space is filled with a whole bunch of negativity and violence, essentially, then that is going to be your whole world as you grow up, regardless of what the rest of the world is like.
Right, because these traumas will, in effect, change your perception of the world or create a perception based on the trauma that you experienced.
Yeah, exactly. And through my research of all those serial killers, and I'm sure that you probably came to some of the same conclusions, that a lot of their psychosis was rooted in their childhood. And maybe like 1 in 100 were just totally crazy out of nowhere and had some kind of, but who even knows where that comes from as well. They say that even trauma or anything experienced by the mother while the baby's in the womb could even cause certain brain mutations. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, that's definitely not as important as the direct experience that, people experience as children. And a lot of those serial killers, they're just acting out the world that they were brought up into. They're pretty much conforming with the world that they were brought up into, just like everybody else out there does.
Right. Well, along with looking at serial killers and trying to understand why they did the things that they did, as well as then bringing it down more to my level and concerning friends and girlfriends and those close around me, I then turned that on to myself because I was then in turn diagnosed, as I mentioned during the break, diagnosed bipolar. I was diagnosed BPD, borderline personality disorder. I was also said to have schizophrenic traits. And with these diagnoses, and I have to admit, in the beginning, which I find a big fault in psychiatry, is they label these diagnoses. They put these labels onto people, and these people, in turn, with no questioning, start to act out the symptoms. They start playing that role when there's actually nothing, really wrong with them. Maybe they have some issues that are, hasn't been resolved or dealt with, but they start acting these things out. And so I, in turn, when I was given these labels and said, this is what's wrong with you, I started questioning that and started doing, some soul searching, which I think is getting back to the point, getting back to a more localized version of philosophy of oneself, of the community, of culture. And that right there, that trauma and the dark times that I spent, I embraced, and it really got me thinking and put me on a path that I can in turn, I start changing from within. Just under 2 minutes left. JG, your thoughts. Finish this up in this segment.
I think that that was a really good point you brought up about how people act out what they're told. And I think that this kind of reflects on a deeper thing with humans, because it also goes back to that whole human nature thing that I always talk about, and how everybody says, oh, well, this nonsense that's going on is just human nature. You can't worry about it. You can't try to change it. And I think that is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you think that this species they're just crazy beasts that have to kill each other and dominate each other, then you're either going to be like that, or you're just going to be a total jerk-off, and that's how it's going to be.
Right.
So I think that is a very important point also, because all of these diagnoses, most of them aren't even legitimate, in my opinion. I mean, there are some of these diagnoses where, yeah, there's something wrong with people, but who knows, as long as they're not acting violently,
right,
then they're not a danger to anybody. Some people that are just a little bit weird get labeled as all sorts of exactly, or have thoughts that aren't deemed socially acceptable. We'll be back right after this. Stay tuned, got a lot more. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Room 101, the Oracle Broadcasting Network. Don't forget, coming up next, Cold Reality News and Report with Andrew Shawley. Great show last week, brother. First time I caught the show. I will be there afterwards. That's the Cold Reality News and Report with Andrew Shawley. Up next here at the Oracle, on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. As I mentioned in the beginning of the show, JG, I came across, this was probably right before I contacted you, maybe a little over a week ago or so, that I seen this little series that this individual put together, and he puts forth a very interesting theory, and one that seems to be rather plausible, and I can understand why some people may find this just absolutely absurd, because they have lived with individuals who have quote unquote mental disorders. But this individual claims that he suffered bipolar, he suffered manic episodes, a lot of mania. But what he did differently is he took these manic episodes and embraced them, I guess you could say,
from a spiritual aspect. And he used these manic episodes as a tool to do what we were kind of talking about in the last segment, some soul searching. And he was able to take and pinpoint the root cause of why he was suffering from this mania, and it turns out that it had to do with, as one could guess, some traumatic experiences that haven't been able to be released from the soul. He goes into the battle between the soul and the ego. But the overall, what he's saying in general, and then I'd like to get your opinion on it, JG, is the theory that bipolar, and he speaks specifically about bipolar because that's what he went through, but bipolar is not what you would call a mental disorder, but yet the episodes of mania is actually a spiritual awakening, and it's actually a healing process. Your thoughts?
I think that's completely right, because with the repression and things like that, the human mind is a really crazy thing, and you can't just repress things. I mean, that's what at this point in time, this species has become really, really good at it, but that doesn't mean that these feelings and emotions and anxieties are actually going away. They're just, going deeper into the psyche, deeper into the body, and just manifesting itself either in some kind of mental episode or some kind of attitude, or even physical problems have been known to manifest themselves because of internal psychological problems. And I think that what you're saying is right about this, because this whole, whatever actions are classified with bipolar behavior at first, that is definitely probably an acting out of these, prior emotions or prior experiences that have been repressed. And the only way to truly overcome these oppressed problems is to face them head on. The longer that you run away from them, the bigger and the worse they become, and then the farther you become removed from them. So it's harder to even pinpoint what's the matter and how to face it. So the sooner that you actually look things in the face, recognize them, and try to overcome them, is when you actually find out what's going on. And that sounds like the approach that this one guy took. Because most people, I guess, when they hear that they have some kind of mental disorder, like you said earlier, they start acting it out subconsciously.
Yeah.
But this guy, he actually realized what was going on, and he faced his problems head on, and I guess that he had somewhat of a level of success from that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He had no medication. He did not consult a doctor. He had in his earlier, and I think he was in his early 20s in college when he had, I think, one of his last manic episodes, and he did. He embraced it, and he used it as a tool to heal. He doesn't have these episodes anymore. He has a website, and I hope I get this right. I will double check it though. But bipolar or waking up.com, I believe, is that. And you can check out. He's also, his YouTube channel is also the same, bipolar or waking up. And he tells you right up front, I'm not a doctor. I am not a psychiatrist. I can only tell you, how this worked for me. And I tell you what, for years I've been saying that I don't anymore. And it was only when I started having this type of mindset and thinking that I'm not going to run away and hide what I am. I had some rough times mentally. I'm going to embrace that, and I'm going to learn from it. There are no bad mistakes unless you don't learn anything from it. That's just my opinion. So what I did was, and I've said this for years, some of the, greatest lessons that I've learned in life came from some of the darkest periods of my life.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I've had similar experiences with that too.
So, but yes, to answer your question, in short, yes, he has had success rates. He has also spoke and helped counsel people and talk with people, present these ideas, and then up to the individuals who suffered bipolar, even to the point of wanting to take their lives, their own lives. That and now these individuals are not on medication because, as you mentioned, absolutely the medication does, it suppresses these manic episodes from surfacing. And when you look at it at face value, that sounds like a great idea. Who wants somebody in their house going through a manic episode, slinging crap around, screaming at you one minute, next minute telling you they love you? The highs and lows, yes, can be very, very frustrating for those dealing with it, such as family or friends. But I do see this, as a healing process, because when I started to embrace these myself years ago, when I started to look at this as not that I'm diseased, that I'm damaged goods, because that's how people start thinking about themselves, that I'm damaged goods. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. I mean, that really affects people's level of self-worth, because a lot of this idea that's put forward, I guess in, modern psychological thought, is that you aren't in control of your own emotions, and you aren't in control. I mean, to some extent, yeah, you aren't in control of your unconscious, but you can be aware of it, and you can work to, I guess, change the way you act on society and things like that. And I think once you understand where your, current problems are coming from, you can really start to alleviate them. Because once you have some sort of like time separation, it's a lot easier to kind of look at these problems when you're not living in them anymore. And the whole aspect of damaged goods, like you were saying, I think that is definitely a serious problem with people, and it makes them give up. And I think that philosophy is a way of kind of figuring all that out and working through that.
Absolutely. Not to cut you off. We do have a break coming up here in just a few seconds, but and I'm glad that you brought that up, that yes, philosophy and understanding oneself and not being afraid to confront the fact that, yeah, you were a douchebag, or you've done wrong. Accountability, personal accountability, and holding yourself accountable for your own wrongdoings or your own inhumane actions. Holding yourself accountable and not trying to pass the buck, I found that to be very helpful myself. Got to take a quick break. Got the final segment coming up in this first hour of My How Time Flies. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to UCY.TV. Real news, real people.
UCY.TV is an up-and-coming investigative media platform designed to give you a voice on the platform of your choice. Video, live radio, podcast, just to name a few. To learn more on what UCY can offer and how you can be a part of UCY.TV, simply email us at contact.ucytv@gmail.com. That's contact.ucytv@gmail.com.
Hello, this is JG Vibes. You can catch my show, Voluntary Hippie Radio, every Wednesday night from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. on UCY.TV.
All right, having a really deep, intense conversation. I think, this is what the Sons of Liberty did, over 200 years ago. They sat around, they philosophized about freedom, about liberty, about how to obtain it. And, we're taking it down to a more personal level. And we were talking during the break, and as I mentioned earlier, JG, I think we really need to take and use philosophy on a personal level. It has this aura of being strictly academic, and as you mentioned, it does turn people off. I was watching another little documentary about American philosophers here, more recently, 20th century, 21st century. And one lady in particular mentioned that, philosophy, it was really, strictly, academic, and that's all people seen it as. And they didn't use it really in their personal lives because it held that academic tag, and it's really kind of hurt the use of philosophy. People find it, as you mentioned, boring, and they don't really see it as useful in their own personal lives. And I beg to differ, and I know you do. So your thoughts on using philosophy on a very personal level, and it dovetails right from what we were talking about as far as the bipolar, because we can use philosophy in examining ourselves. Having an examined life, and I cannot remember the quote, I just seen it last night, something along the lines of, having an unexamined life isn't even really worth living. And I'm paraphrasing.
That's the exact quote, yeah.
Yeah.
That's something just as along those lines. Yeah, I think that generally that is a big problem with mainstream education or mainstream learning of any kind is this whole like reductionist like way of looking at things where everything is academic and everything is dates and names and theories and all this nonsense that can be tested, and that's not what philosophy is about in my view. Philosophy is about, as I said earlier, having a personal understanding of reality. And I think that if people realize that, it would probably be a lot more interesting. And I think that the establishment who controls all these education systems, and they've controlled philosophy generally for most of history because they controlled who was literate and who wasn't. They controlled what ran on the printing presses and what didn't, or who had money to get a publisher and who didn't. So I think that they don't want people sitting around philosophizing and finding out why they're doing the things they've done, because then propaganda isn't effective on you.
Right, and solutions start coming about, through the minds of just your average, ordinary Joes and Janes. Start, and you don't have to be. And see, this is another reason why, philosophy, I think, is kind of looked down because of the academic aspect of it, because people think that they have to have a degree. They have to have taken philosophy in college. No, every single one of us has the ability to, really be a self-proclaimed, a makeshift philosopher. We're doing it right now.
Yeah, I think that we all should be philosophers, and I personally think that if humanity has any chance, we're going to evolve to the point where everyone is a philosopher, kind of in the sense of how everyone was religious in the 1400s. Because the reason why I bring the religion comparison in is because it's a world view, but with philosophy, it's also a world view, but it's a personal world view, and it's one that's not rigid. It can change based on evidence. So if everybody has their own way of looking at the world, then they can walk into one another and have a friendly conversation about it without killing each other or ripping each other's heads open, and they completely disagree with half of what they're talking about, but it doesn't matter because everybody has their own little ideas, and people agree on some of them, and I'm not saying that everything's completely relativistic because I don't subscribe to that. There are things in our 5 sense reality that we can prove and verify and compare with other things, but basically what I'm saying is we each have our own understanding of reality, and it's personal, based on our own experiences and what's going on in our head. And philosophy applies to that, and philosophy can be used in that sense. And I think when you have this academic way of looking at things where everybody has to, read Aristotle from 3,000 years ago, and it does help to read the great philosophers, but it's not necessary.
It's not necessary, right?
Exactly. You can have your own interpretation of reality without looking at some dead dude's ideas, as I like to say, with no disrespect to the dead dudes who had good ideas, but there's no reason to think that you can't put this into action in your own life, or that you can't sit around and dissect reality without a degree. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
You shouldn't. I think that's a barrier for us, that people think that they need some kind of, approval or some kind of
some sort of credential, you know, that
That's the word I was looking for.
Right, because I had that brought up to me just when speaking about 9/11, when I first started getting really active and getting out, and, you know, I did the whole passing DVDs out, trying to, you know, plant them seeds with people and this and that. Made me feel good that I was active in world events, basically. I mean, because 9/11, quite frankly, rocked the world. just ask those in Iraq, Afghanistan, and so on and so forth. But I was told, you know, what credentials do you have? Look, man, you don't need credentials. You know, I mean, you can look at basic science. And you know, that's the thing. You know, philosophy, okay, you know, a philosopher is basically, I mean, I think we can all agree, a thinker. No real, you know, specific direction. A person who seeks wisdom, a thinker. And you know, how thinking more and obtaining more wisdom, more knowledge for the purpose of bettering one's life, how that could ever be a bad idea, I don't know.
Yeah, you said it better than I could myself. That was a really great description of just being a thinker. You know what I'm saying? That's what.
You don't need a college degree to be a thinker. Now, yeah, with a college degree, some may say that degree makes you a better thinker than others. I, again, disagree with that. But yeah, that's all we're talking about here. And upon obtaining, you know, more knowledge, well, then just like we see with you know, propaganda, it's meant to change our perception of the world around us, and on the other side of the coin of the propaganda used in a very devious manner, knowledge can take and propel you to see a different perception of the world around you, and that is the interchange. You have to be open to the knowledge and not be so closed-minded, JG.
Oh, yeah, and you can't have the outer change without the inner change.
Without the interchange, exactly.
And I think that's a lot of times the problem with people getting stuck in the same kind of thought patterns and the same kind of action patterns, because they're trying to fight the physical actions.
Yes.
Like, they're trying to hold themselves back from just one more drink, or, you know, whatever their thing is that they're having a problem with. They're trying to fight their body from committing the action, and they're fighting a losing battle when they're doing that.
Absolutely. JG, gotta cut you off. We're going into top of the hour break. Hour number 2 coming up right after these short messages. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hour number 2 here in Room 101 at the Oracle Broadcasting Network. Room101radio.net is the site. And my email, Kurt, C-U-R-T, at room101radio.net. My guest today, JG Vibes from AOTMR.com. JG, how can people get a hold of you? You want to throw out your Facebook? This is the short segment, so I figured we give out some ways for people to get in contact with us, as after this show, they may want, have questions and want to philosophize. And when I say they have questions, not as if we have the answers, but that's what it's all about. Any particulars you want to throw out there, my friend?
Well, the Facebook and all of the social network stuff is actually listed on my site, AOTMR.com. But I think the short link for Facebook is facebook.com/JGVibes. And that's where I do most of my broadcasting at least news and information from, and I also do all sorts of funny memes and things like that from there too.
Good stuff, yeah, indeed.
And then,
go ahead.
And at AOTMR I actually have a whole ton of different stuff, from free books to the purchase link for my book to music stuff, daily news articles, so whole bunch going on there.
And you write a lot of your own stuff as well.
Yeah, well, nowadays most of the content that comes through there is written by me. Not all of it, but at least like 50% now. That's
awesome. And you know, so many people find you made a statement earlier in the show that, as children, the world is so small, and if we suffer a lot of trauma early on, we can get kind of jaded mentally, to where we don't see where we fit in as we get older and the world gets bigger and bigger, and we start getting a more greater understanding of how big and complex things, can be. And, we get kind of thrown, so soul searching. What I'm getting at is soul searching and really using philosophy to gain a better understanding of yourself can take and, reveal what you are indeed, good at. What is your natural talents? And, these are the things that you hear people. I know you've heard the expression, not one person can do everything, but everyone can do something, or something along them lines. And that's what I'm kind of getting at. We can come to a better understanding of, who we are. I'm not saying we're going to know exactly, but we'll have a better understanding of those really deep philosophical questions like, who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? And so on and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the smaller questions help out with at least being able to wrap your mind around the bigger questions.
Yeah, right. Right. The complexity of it all can be very overwhelming. And, I have found myself, even here of late getting overwhelmed. And I ask these questions, about myself to try and gain some better understanding. And it can have really the opposite effect. But maybe it isn't really the opposite effect. Maybe it's the intended effect. Going back to using these dark times as actual tools in the healing process. We'll talk more. We got so much so many rabbit holes we can go down, JG. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, more JG Vibes from AOTMR.com and myself, Kurt Williams, here in room 101. Stay tuned. Gaining deeper understandings of ourselves to try and bring about some stability, to try and get through the tough, economic times. The first thing that pops into my head, the economy after QE3 and this indefinite printing of $40 billion a year. A lot of us are already down there at the bottom, JG, and, we don't have to far fall, true, but we're also going to be one of the first ones that's going to be affected. A price change, a 10-cent price increase may not affect those who got a few G's in the bank, but you know what? It's going to affect us who haven't seen a few G's in quite some time. So how do we get through these tough times? Well, as JG and myself have been discussing, if you're just joining us, it all really comes back. The common thread here is understanding, having more of an understanding of oneself. And, as I mentioned earlier, there was this documentary showing, it was on human behavior, and it was showing, in one particular case, 28 people watched another one, an individual, a lady, get stabbed 4 times, consequently murdered at the end of the night, being watched by yet another neighbor. And you mentioned it's very much this herd mentality, because they did studies and showed that people who come across a situation where, they did a study where they pushed smoke up underneath a door in a room where one person was sitting, and if it was just one person, that person immediately ran out, said, "Hey, there's smoke coming out, I think there's a fire, blah, blah, blah." When they had 2 or 3 or 4 people in there, they all just kind of looked at each other. The room filled with smoke. Not one person got up. And this herd mentality, well, as you mentioned, a lack of understanding of oneself. It could very much be brought back to that common issue. And elaborate on that, JG, because it really seems very plausible, because you don't really have a direction. And I felt that way for years and years and years. I didn't have a direction. I used the term, I was a lost soul. I had no idea where I fit in, what my purpose was. And I did, in fact, when I was younger, even into my, early adulthood, was caught up in the herd mentality, possibly a lack of understanding. Go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, well, you started to talk about the herd mentality, and I was thinking that a lot of this has to probably do with what we're talking about, because when people don't have a way of deciphering reality that gives them any kind of confidence, they tend to just kind of go with the flow and just rest on the majority opinion for everything. And you kind of get to the point where you have today where nobody really has any understanding of philosophy, nobody has any understanding of themselves or even humanity's psyche in general or what's going on, and they look around to what's popular and what the majority opinion is, which usually just comes from high up anyway, and they just go with that because they can't really think for themselves, or they can't understand what's going on in their own head, so they don't have any confidence, and they just kind of go with the herd. And I really think that not having a way of deciphering reality is a big part of that.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And, I think, a lot of us could really look at our own journey to understanding the world around us, and can probably trace our own experiences back to a time where we were indeed part of that herd mentality. I know I'm not ashamed to say it. I was there. I find myself, sometimes having to consciously make an effort not to go along. And a lot of, with that herd mentality, because you'll see it a lot, over the internet, you'll see, just one story or one particular opinion just circulates like wildfire. Next thing you know, everybody is of that opinion. Whether it right or wrong, because the no personal investigation part of it, is the personal responsibility of the individual. And, you don't want to blindly get caught up in that. And, I've seen, just real quick along these lines, I saw another article that over half of, the states, over half the populace, they did a big Gallup poll and found that mainstream media views, their credibility is plummeting. Now there's this, and I can't remember the exact terminology, but there is a situation where it's almost like a critical mass at a consciousness level, and to where ideas, circulate so much that that changing in perception of the world changes. Zbigniew Brzezinski, made a point to mention that, and this was quite a few years ago, that we're seeing this global consciousness, this political awakening, and I think at a deeper level, this is individuals understanding, gaining knowledge to break out of that herd mentality, and just follow the facts where they may lie. Would you agree? And have you heard of this? It's almost like a critical mass of consciousness of ideas.
I have heard of it in a slightly different context, though. I didn't hear what Zbigniew Brzezinski had to say on it, but I do remember that some researchers refer to this as the 100th monkey effect, or something like that, and that was because there was some kind of, I don't even think this was a study. I think this was like something that, off the top of my head, I'm just trying to remember what happened and how this concept got this name, but there was some kind of island or something where there was nuclear testing on, I believe, and the monkeys there, I guess they lived there, and they knew that they had to clean off, I guess it was coconuts they were eating. I don't know if monkeys.
I think it was a potato, and they had to wash the sand off of it, and they taught a few monkeys how to do it.
Exactly, and then once you teach one person how to do it, or whatever, after a while, once 100 of them knew it, I don't think it was 100. It was probably some arbitrary number that doesn't compute with us, but it doesn't make anyway. After a certain number, that was that critical mass, and then none of the other monkeys had to be taught.
And guess what? That spanned over continents too. Monkeys that weren't even involved in being shown how to do this, all of a sudden started doing it all over the world. Got to take a quick break. It's a great point, though. We'll be back right after this. Stay tuned. Self-empowerment. Well, self-empowerment seems to get a bad rap anymore. JJ, I've noticed that, television shows have increasingly over the years, take and demasculate men and make, stupid look cool. And stupid is not cool. Thinking is very cool. And one thing that people do when they catch your show. Please let everyone know when they can listen to you spout your philosophy, your thoughts, your opinions. When can people catch you? What's the days and times on that, buddy?
Every Wednesday at 10 o'clock on ucy.tv, and I have the archives up at aotmr.com as well.
Awesome.
And I usually go through a combination of generally what I have going on, my recent articles of the week, and I usually play appearances like this one, so I'll probably be playing probably a lot of this interview because it's been really good on Wednesday.
This has been a great broadcast, if I do say so myself. Just for the fact that this is something what we're discussing here. But before I get off on a rant, I want to mention another coming up right after myself, another show that'll get you thinking. This early Sunday morning, the Cold Reality News and Report with Andrew Shawley, and here at the Oracle Broadcasting Network, oraclebroadcasting.com I think you can link up with his chat over there. But one thing JJ mentioned earlier, of course, James Freeland, also broadcasting here at Oracle. One thing he brought up was, maybe when I mentioned before the show that it wasn't going to be so much, politics and this and that, and not even, really to the angle of social issues, which is where I usually direct my attention: police terrorism, the public indoctrination camps, aka public schools, as well as the psychiatry, which we did touch a little bit on, as far as exploring oneself and understanding, what's going on, instead of just taking the opinion of somebody in a white coat. But, I just completely lost my train of thought. Anyway, I got it now. He was mentioning that, these types of conversations like we're having, JG, could be, and I have to agree, even more important to have than the conversations of, regurgitating, the same old. A lot of times we get caught up in this whole repetitive, stage where we're not really, we're spinning our wheels. We're not moving forward. We're not, evolving. We have to evolve within ourselves before we can even expect society as a whole, to evolve. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because even knowing what's wrong physically is not. That's only half the battle, and the harder part of it is to be a part of. I hate to use this again and again and again, but be the change that you want to see in the world. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. It holds a lot of truth. Yeah, it's overused. That phrase is used quite a bit, but it holds a lot of truth. If we want a peaceful society, well, damn it, we have to be peaceful. We can't be of violent nature and expect our surroundings to be peaceful. And, that can really get into, that's a whole rabbit hole in itself when you start talking about energies that people, put off and, going down in consciousness but yeah, absolutely, it has to start within yourself. Now, if you, are damaged goods or from a mental aspect, and I'm not talking about, you've been labeled with psychological disorders or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about damage in the fact that maybe your critical thinking ability has been, damaged over the years, and we can thank public education for that one, because critical thinking is really, I think, what, the basis of what we're talking about, part of the foundation of what we're talking about, right, JG? Critical thinking, using our noggin, using our head for something other than a hat rack.
Oh yeah, definitely. You said earlier that philosophy is really just to think, and if you get good at it, then you're thinking critically, and then that's where you want to be, you know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah, and people think, I think all the time. I'm thinking right now. But, this is where philosophy really intrigues me, because then, you turn into like a 2-year-old. You know what I'm saying? You ask questions about anything. Why is the sky blue? Why is this? Why is that? Why is this? And I think we'd probably be better off as a society, as a person, if maybe we resorted back to that particular 2-year-old behavior and asking questions. Because, if not, if we're, afraid to ask these questions, then I think even without our knowledge, we're put into that herd mentality, which we mentioned is, well, a lack of understanding of oneself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So many different, directions, that we can go here. And, one that, I keep, my mind keeps drifting back to, and that's the dealing with let's say the stresses of the day, using philosophy as an antidepressant, if you will, greater understanding. Now, I'm a pose devil's advocate here, JG, because you expressed your, how you pretty much agree with this guy's theory of, bipolar being a spiritual awakening. I'm gonna play devil's advocate. But come on, have you ever lived with somebody with bipolar, JG? I mean, it's horrible. I mean, 1 minute they're throwing things across the room, they're telling you they hate you. I mean, it's complete chaos. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. How can this in any way be therapeutic?
Well, I would say that those reactions that person's having are going to happen anyway, whether you repress them or not. And to actually understand them and overcome them would be to make them go away for good. Because I would say with somebody that's putting something like that forward, that we're both on the same page, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
We both understand that behavior is something that we don't want in our lives. But the difference between somebody with a philosophical viewpoint is they're trying to get to the root cause of it so it can be taken care of for good. And that's not to say that person is never going to have any problems again, but whatever problems that they are acting out in that moment with that situation, they are going to be able to overcome.
And the gentleman that put together that series of videos, the one who runs the website Bipolar or Waking Up, he made that point. Look, once you fight, and whatnot, and embrace these feelings, this mania, doesn't mean you're never going to have problems afterwards. Of course, you're going to have life issues. We'll be back right after this. Stay tuned. Quick break. All right, we're in the final stretch in the second episode, Room 101 here at the Oracle Broadcasting Network. My guest today, J.G. Vibes, author, activist. AOTMR.com is his website. If you are just joining us, the archives will be up with a quickness after the broadcast here this Sunday morning. JG, I watched a very disturbing video. But before I get into that, actually, I want to discuss a little bit about, we've been talking about individuals, taking and looking inward, if you will, understanding oneself, using philosophy to do this, trying. I think we've tried, in a sense, to destroy the paradigm that philosophy is all academic, and you can't be a philosopher unless you went to this school and you went to that school, and well, that's bogus, because basically philosophy is just, thinking and thinking critically and not following in that herd mentality as we were speaking about. But one aspect, one way, I wanted to give some examples of different perspectives that maybe we can look at to really see things for what they really are. And that brings me to the topic of titles and labels. I see a lot of times just blind obedience to those who carry titles of authority. Now, I think it's without much argument that, public schools, if they teach anything, it's how to obey authority, how to take orders, to not question, to not critically think. And, I want to get this story out about this video. Very disturbing. There was an incident that happened to about 75 different fast food restaurants. And what had happened was a gentleman was calling, posing as a police officer, and he would call and speak with the manager. The one most disturbing case that at least I had seen regarding this was at a McDonald's. And this individual calls, poses as a cop, tells the manager that so-and-so, this young lady, blah, 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 had stolen some money. Without any evidence, without any questioning by the manager proceeds to take orders from this individual and starts doing whatever she is told by somebody claiming to be a cop. In her defense, she said it was very convincing. You don't know what you would do unless you were in that situation. I can partly understand that, but then again, I put myself in this position. And no, I can honestly say that yes, in that situation, no, I want to see something other than just hearing a voice on the other end of the telephone. Anyway, the young lady the employee was strip searched by the manager. Then the manager had to go back on the floor, do her managerial duties. Her fiance, the manager's fiance, that is sitting in this room, and all this girl has is one of the aprons that they use to cover herself up. The fiance is now on the phone with the guy posing as a cop. And, well, at the end of the day, there were sexual actions at the hands of the young girl because the fiance was told by the cop that this is what the girl should do. Just utterly disgusting and disturbing. And which brings me to the point of labels. JG, we see far too many times, even those who understand the epidemic level of police terrorism, a lot of people will still just say, oh yeah, a cop kicked a pregnant woman in the stomach. And as wrong as that is, and as outraged as we should be, let's reword it. And let's take the titles out of it. And let's say, let's actually take the title out of it and word it a little differently using other titles. If we're going to be blindly obedient to those carrying titles of authority, let's replace them with other titles of authority to bring back the human nature. How about we say one husband kicked the pregnant, the unborn child and wife of another husband. That has a different meaning to it. Because if you hear that of happening in your neighborhood, if that happened to either one of us, if either one of us, any one of us were caught up in a situation like that, we would be hauled off to jail. And I get in charges, due process, and rightfully so. I'm not trying to rationalize it at all. But when a cop does it, because of that title, that label that he has of law enforcement, kind of a weird play on words, don't you think, JG? Went from peace officer to law enforcement and protection, or protect and serve to law enforcement. But anyway, to wrap it up, to give you a few minutes here before the break, putting the human element, we have to look at things differently, in order to really see what's really going on. And, titles and labels has taken the human element out of it, and it's, led the way for us to just blindly accept corruption.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I think with all of these police brutality cases, there's more and more, every day. It's out of control. I can't even keep up with it.
It is.
And people don't process them. A lot of times, they don't even digest the full headline. They'll just see cop, they'll just see generally that a cop mashed somebody up, not even look at the details and be like, oh, just doing his job.
Right.
And that's because of the title. That's because, they put on these magic costumes and they're allowed to prance around and knock people's teeth out.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever they do is kind of less of a problem, less of a threat. And obviously, like you said, if you put people on even ground, if that was just one human being, hurting another human being, people would look at it completely differently.
They really would, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, sure, there are cases where there is random acts of violence, but if you look at the big violence that goes on in our world, the reason why it goes on is because, it's justified. It's not literally justified, not justified in reality, but it's justified in people's minds, so where they'll go along with it and they'll participate in these mass acts of violence because somebody with a title has convinced them that it's just.
Mm-hmm.
And then personally, I believe that the small acts of violence are a recreation of that, because people emulate those in power, because naturally that's our,
conditioning.
Yeah, that's our conditioning, to look to those in power and to replicate what those in power do. And everybody wants to be successful. Everybody sees the benefits of being in power or being successful. So then that's what they strive to be, what they see as people are in power. And if people in power are violent and force their will on people, then that sends a message to the rest of the world that if you want to get ahead, you need to be shady and violent.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think with this police stuff, that's a lot of the reason why it just goes completely over people's heads. Because once the title is thrown out there, then nothing else matters. The actions don't matter, and it was just a cop doing his job. I really am convinced that it's going to get more ridiculous. Like, they're going to keep on doing crazy things, and it's going to get to, like, a cartoonish level where people like me and you are just going to be sitting there shaking our heads in disbelief.
Yeah.
And everybody else is still going to be saying, oh, just doing their job.
Just
and I think we're really...
Yeah,
to that point now.
Exactly, and I hear that argument with drones. Well, they might catch murderers. They're just doing their job, more or less. They're just protecting us, keeping us safe. All right, ladies and gentlemen, final segment. My good friend JG Vibes are going to wrap things up here in room 101. Stay tuned. We'll be back. All right, we're wrapping things up here in 101, episode number 2. I hope everyone has enjoyed this conversation that I've been having with my good friend JG Vibes. You can see everything that he's doing. Link up with him on all the social media networks, AOTMR.com. It's been a really great broadcast. JG, I want to thank you for getting up early, with me, and I want to thank everyone for getting up early this Sunday morning. Keep it locked right here at Oracle Broadcasting. Up next, the Cold Reality News and Report with Mr. Andrew Shawley is following just in under 10 minutes, in about 9 minutes or so. So keep it here this Sunday afternoon. JG, you brought up a really perfect way to take and wrap this up, because the whole point of having this topic of discussion being philosophy is we're going to go back to the root question, really, that has sparked you coming on and us having this discussion. And that's, what are the uses? How can one use philosophy in their day-to-day experiences, in their day-to-day stressors? I mean, because the world is literally crumbling around us. I mean, and down to the community level, the social level. I mean, it's just crumbling around us. How can one use philosophy to better their day?
Well, I think. Oh, you there? Sorry, you cut out for a minute.
No, go ahead, buddy. Yeah, what would you tell somebody that posed that question to you? JG, how can I use philosophy on I'm just an average Joe, average Jane. How can I use philosophy in my day-to-day adventures? Well, I would say that, as we said before, it's kind of thinking and deciphering reality is philosophy. So when we encounter situations in our day-to-day, it's really easy for a bad situation to snowball into a bad day. And philosophy can help us prevent that snowball effect from happening, I think. Because when something happens to us, and none of us are perfect at this, of course. Even somebody who really knows what's going on with themselves and around them can struggle with certain situations. Right. But if you get into something that's difficult, you can think, all right, why do I feel this way about this? Or why is this person acting this way? Because it can go one way or the other. Maybe what's going on right then at that time isn't that big of a deal. Maybe you're just having an internal personal reaction to it because of an idea in your head or something that happened to you in the past. And just asking that question to yourself, why am I feeling this way and why is this happening? That could bring up something that can either help you with that situation at the time, or it might help you to bring yourself to a personal state of peace, or closer towards that personal state of peace, rather, by figuring out another part about yourself. And it can go the other way, too. It can be that the other person is completely crazy, and the whatever person you're dealing with, or whatever situation you're dealing with. And in that case, you can ask yourself a whole bunch of questions. You can ask yourself, why is this person acting this out? What's going on here? And then you can also say to yourself, how and why did I attract this person with these problems into my life? And how can I prevent myself from getting into this mess again? And that can help you down the line from experiencing the problem that you're running into at that point in time. Because we can't change, we definitely can't change our past, and we can't change what's happened in the here and now. When we're experiencing something, we can't make it go away, but we can learn from it, try to prevent it from happening in the future, and maybe even learn something about ourselves in the process. Right. Well, as I meant, there's no such thing as a bad mistake unless you don't learn anything from it. And, great way to, take and put it. And I think that understanding, having a better understanding, a better awareness of yourself, asking these simple questions, using that brain of yours instead of emotion, and because they're really preconceived emotions is really, I think kind of how we base our reactions to certain situations. We've had this situation maybe in the past, and we've dealt with it a certain way, and whether it's good or bad, I've seen it on both sides of the spectrum. We resort back to that particular way of dealing with a situation And then, well, it does take, sometimes, JG, I'll sit in the room. Some say, oh, you're antisocial. No, man, I'm trying to understand something. I will sit in a room dark, and I will just think about things, and I will think about, issues that I'm dealing with. Again, some say that's antisocial. I'm one that could sit in a crowd of people and just not say a word for hours. Not because I don't want to speak with anyone, not because I don't want to be sociable, but there's a lot to take in, and I feel that I'm missing out if I'm just, if I just jump right into the thick of it. I just kind of want to stand there, observe, take things in, and feel comfortable, before I was to, jump right in. But understanding and being aware, asking these little questions when you come across a situation, hey, why am I feeling this way? Is there a deeper rooted issue that's bringing about this reaction? Great. That's exactly, what we need to be doing. And that's exactly how we can use philosophy in our day-to-day. And, I think, as you mentioned, and this has happened so many times to me, something small that would be very trivial to anyone else, won't really, set me into a rage, but it dampens the mood to where my whole damn day is ruined. It's unbelievable, and I find those are the times where I don't sit down and I don't think about these things. Or, you gotta be careful, sometimes I've had a tendency to sit and stew on the things that I shouldn't be, and, that can have, obviously, an opposite effect. JJ, we got 2 minutes left. Again, throw out when your show's going to be on, your website, all the good stuff that you're doing in the last couple minutes here.
Yeah, good stuff. I would also mention just that I think some of those people that might be overtly social, and I think they might be running away from thinking about some of the things that we're talking about. So I just wanted to add that before I got into my website and stuff, which is AOTMR.com, the acronym for my book, Alchemy of the Modern Renaissance, an 87-chapter counterculture textbook. My show is Voluntary Hippie Radio, and that is every Wednesday night, 10 to 12 on UCY.TV. And the archives are up at AOTMR.com as well. And I also have some free books and audio books on the website as well. Awesome. And,
if you liked what you heard from JG, you're sure to get more of that on Voluntary Hippie Radio. I love that name. That's good stuff. That made me laugh when I first heard it. Thanks again, JG, for joining me. I'll be in contact with you in the very near future. Again, don't go anywhere here at Oracle Broadcasting. The Cold Reality News and Report with Andrew Shawley is coming up next. I will be back here unlocking the doors to Room 101 next Sunday, 9 a.m. Thank you for joining me. All you great listeners. You guys are awesome. JG, thank you again for getting up early, having an early Sunday morning talk about philosophy, coffee, friends. It doesn't get much better than that. Thanks again, brother.